All right, let's talk about the big picture, the entire forest, not just the individual trees. This is macroeconomics. We're going to break down how economists, check the pulse of an entire nation's economy. And more importantly, we'll see what those vital signs really mean for your wallet, your job, and your future. So what is the difference between micro and macroeconomics? Well, think of it like this. Microeconomics zooms way in on the individual trees. One person, one company, one market. But macroeconomics, it zooms way out to see that whole forest. It's not worried about the price of a single cup of coffee, but it is very concerned with why it feels like the cost of everything is going up. Okay, so if we're going to put a formal definition on it, macroeconomics is the study of the economy as a whole. The best analogy really is an annual physical for a country's financial health. It's all about looking at the big picture performance, everything from national income and investments to the overall job market.
Now, to do this checkup, macroeconomics hones in on 6 key areas, or vital signs. These are the core metrics that tell us if an economy is booming, just getting by, or really struggling. So let's break them down, one by one. First up, we've got production. And yeah, this is the big one. It's the total value of everything a country makes and does. We're talking cars, computers, haircuts, healthcare, you name it, all tallied up over a certain period. This is basically the number one measure of how an economy is doing. And this all boils down to the most fundamental question in all of macroeconomics. Is the economic pie getting bigger, or is it getting smaller? The answer tells us pretty much everything about where a country is headed.
And this is exactly where it gets personal for all of us. You've got 2 scenarios, right? On one side, there's expansion. That means economic growth, more opportunities, and just a general rise in prosperity. But on the other side, there's contraction, a shrinking economy, and that often means businesses closing their doors and people losing their jobs.
Which leads us perfectly to our second vital sign, unemployment. Now, this isn't just about not having a job. Specifically, it's about people who are able to work, they're willing to work, they are actively looking for a job, but they just can't find one. And as you can imagine, it's an indicator that's tied directly to production.
The core question it asks is simple, but it's also incredibly profound. Can people who want to contribute, who want to be part of the economy, actually find a way to do it? The health of the job market is a direct reflection of the health of the entire economy. The connection here is crystal clear. When the economy shrinks and production slows down, businesses just don't need as many workers. That means they stop hiring, and in a lot of cases, it means layoffs. So that unemployment rate is a super powerful signal of whether we're in a downturn or a recovery.
Okay, our third vital sign is inflation. Now listen, the absolute key word here is continuous. We are not talking about the price of gas jumping up for a week. Inflation is a sustained, across-the-board increase in prices that slowly, or sometimes quickly, eats away at the value of your money.
And that's the real gut check question, isn't it? If you have a $20 bill today, will it buy you less stuff tomorrow, or next month, or next year? When inflation is high, the answer is a definite yes. Your savings, your salary, they just don't go as far as they used to.
And the damage from high inflation can be huge. It hits people on fixed incomes and savers the hardest, which can make the gap between the rich and poor even wider. It creates a ton of uncertainty, which makes it really hard for businesses to plan for the future, and it can even hurt a country's ability to trade with other nations. All right, next, we need to look at the government's owned books with our fourth vital sign, the budget deficit. To put it simply, this is when a government spends more money on things like roads, defense, social programs that it brings in through taxes. Every year there's a shortfall, that's a deficit, and it gets added to the total national debt. It's really no different than a household spending more than it earns and putting the rest on a credit card. The big question is whether the government's spending habits are actually sustainable in the long run.
Now, here's the thing. Deficits aren't automatically bad. Sometimes a government might run a deficit on purpose to try and kickstart a sluggish economy. But if it becomes a habit, if you have these chronic deficits year after year, it can become a real problem, maybe even driving up inflation or making it harder for private companies to get loans.
Next up, international relations. In our totally connected modern world, no economy is an island. Every single country is part of this incredibly complex global web of trade, of investment, of money flowing back and forth. What happens in one part of the world can create ripples that are felt absolutely everywhere. So this forces us to ask, How deeply intertwined is our own national economy with everyone else's? Are we primarily selling things to the world, buying from the world, borrowing, lending? What's our role on the world stage? And things like globalization and just the incredible speed of technology are weaving these connections tighter and tighter every single year. Just think about the journey of a single smartphone. The raw materials come from one place, it's assembled somewhere else, and then it's sold all over the globe. This specialization means we depend on each other more than ever before. And all that interconnectedness leads us right to our sixth and final vital sign, external deficits. You probably know them as trade deficits. It's a simple idea. A country runs an external deficit when it buys more stuff from the world, those are imports, than it sells to the world, those are exports. So a country's currency value plays a huge role here. Let's just walk through that top row. Say your currency gets stronger. All of a sudden, foreign goods look a lot cheaper, so you start buying more imports. But at the same exact time, the stuff you make is now more expensive for other countries, so your exports go down. That combination, it's the classic recipe for an external deficit. And of course, the exact opposite happens if your currency gets weaker. Okay, so we've got our 6 vital signs, but here is the single most important takeaway from all of this. They don't exist in a vacuum. They are all interconnected in this really delicate balancing act. You pull a lever on one, and it can set off a whole chain reaction through the others. Let me walk you through a textbook example. Okay, step 1. The problem is inflation is getting too high. So step 2, policymakers take action to cool the economy down. But then step 3, there's a side effect. Production starts to slow down and businesses aren't investing as much. So what's the final consequence in step 4? Well, unemployment starts to go up. It is a really tough trade-off with no easy answers. So why does any of this matter? Because these big concepts, production, unemployment, inflation, they aren't just charts and graphs in a textbook. They are the invisible forces that literally determine your job security, how much you're paying for groceries, and whether the money you've worked so hard to save is growing or shrinking in value. And all of this leaves us with one final big question to think about. As technology and globalization keep weaving our economies together even more tightly, which of these 6 vital signs do you think will be the most critical one to watch for our collective future?